D, wait for it, delightful.
Check out the name tag. You're in my world now, Grandma.
The MCU is packed with a ton of awesome characters. There have been so many heroes that there's an entire movie focused on the heroes fighting each other. The villains have become cultural icons as soon as they've graced the screen, with characters like Loki and Thanos being particular fan favorites. Unfortunately, the Marvel movies have misrepresented some of the characters in their film adaptations. These characters are either completely underused or completely redefined or redesigned to the point of being unrecognizable for their comic book counterparts. When pressured to make a movie that appeals to all audiences, of course there are going to be changes. But still, comic fans are passionate about their characters, and it doesn't take much to step too far and leave the fans scratching their heads at what exactly they just saw. The thing is, the MCU, for how expansive it is only scratching the surface of the catalog of characters that are available for film adaptation. There are literally decades of comic books available and tons of characters that have never been seen or referenced yet in any Marvel TV or film adaptation. Some of these characters have huge followings and deserve to have their own moment on the spotlight. I've taken a look at the characters of the MCU that simply don't belong in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Amadeus Cho. Amadeus Cho is a fantastic comic book character. He is the totally awesome Hulk, a newer, more modern character who has gained a Hulk side. He's one of the smarter characters in the comics and has become intertwined in the universe as a whole. Though the character appeared in Incredible Hulk, he was completely underused. He was given no lines and simply held pizza and nodded at Bruce Banner. Martin Starr, the actor who played the character, also is an Asian, and the character is, which makes it one more case of Marvel miscasting a minority role. Fortunately, the character wasn't identified by name in the movie, so hopefully the MCU can smoothly recast the character and reintroduce him into the MCU in Phase 4. Whiplash. Iron Man 2 featured Whiplash, but the villain bore little resemblance to the comic book source material. The movie version of the character was some of an amalgamation of Crimson Dynamo and Whiplash, rather than being a faithful adaptation of either of the characters. Honestly, Whiplash isn't that great of a villain in the first place. The only reason they combined him with Crimson Dynamo for the movie is so that we weren't forced to watch Iron Man fight a copy of himself. Whiplash's whips were something new, but Iron Man has plenty of other better villains, so there was no need for Marvel to choose Whiplash in the first place. Baron Zemo. Baron Zemo is a name that actually belongs to two different generations of villain, and both have been adversaries of Captain America in the comic books. Both have been among Cap's greatest enemies, the elder being directly responsible for the explosion that led to Cap's freezing and Bucky's eventual path to becoming the Winter Soldier. In Captain America Civil War, Zemo is instead a former soldier from Sylvia who gets revenge on the Avengers by pitting them against each other through a series of manipulated events. That he's not involved in Hydra like his comic book counterpart makes the villain feel extremely disconnected from the source material. If you're going to put one of Cap's greatest nemesis in a movie, at least do it right. Vulture. Vulture is the villain of Spider-Man Homecoming. To be honest, he's one of the better villains in the MCU, but that's because of Michael Keaton's acting, not because the villain is a worthy opponent to Peter Parker. That's why the MCU's version is so different from his comic book counterpart. In the comics, Vulture is an elderly scientist who develops a suit that allows him to fly, and a serum that allows him to de-age. In the movie, Vulture is a middle-aged father who is running an illegal alien tech business. The only similarity between the two is the flying suit, and even that looks different. If your character needs to be redesigned from the ground up, you probably shouldn't use him. The Prowler. The internet loves Donald Glover. Perhaps the most beloved role of his among comic book fans was the Ultimate Spider-Man TV series. On the show, he is the voice of Miles Morales, who is a fan-favorite character and one who has yet to be seen within the MCU. In a nod to his role, Donald Glover was cast in the role of Spider-Man Homecoming. He is trying to buy some alien weapons. He references his nephew, and fans piece together that the character he was playing was Spider-Man character called the Prowler. Unless they actually develop the character in the future, though, this cameo is nothing but disappointing. It would be unfortunate if this casting didn't pay off. Malekith. Malekith is a pretty decent villain in the comics, but is far from being one of Thor's most memorable or most dangerous opponents. Fans of Thor wouldn't often choose Malekith for a favorite villain, and yet he was chosen to be the main antagonist in Thor: The Dark World. The villain was underdeveloped, and the conflict felt like a flimsy reason to introduce the next Infinity Stone. It's possible that the movie would have been horrible anyway, but Thor has plenty of other villains who could have been used. The Wrecking Crew is one group that fans have been hoping to see in the movies, and the movie would have been a lot more enjoyable with them instead of Malekith the Dark Elf. Aldrich Killian. In Iron Man 3, the big bad villain of the movie ends up being Aldrich Killian. Sporting a Chinese dragon tattoo and the powers of the extremist virus, Killian returns from Tony's past to get revenge for having once been ditched at a New Year's Eve party. Declaring himself to be the Mandarin, Killian ultimately gets taken down by Pepper Potts. But honestly, he shouldn't have been in the movie, let alone in the MCU. In the comics, Killian is a character who's confined to a few pages only. His comic book counterpart quickly kills himself after developing the extremist virus. Honestly, had the actual Mandarin gotten his hands on the extremist virus, the movie would have been better, and Killian wouldn't have been a character. Batroc the Leaper. Batroc the Leaper shows up in the very beginning of Captain America: The Winter Soldier. During Cap's first mission of the movie, Cap bites Batroc, who uses a martial arts form that emphasizes jumping and kicking, and he gets taken out almost immediately. It turns out that Batroc was hired by Nick Fury so that he could get Black Widow in place to extract intel about the impending Hydra mutiny within S.H.I.E.L.D.'s ranks. Still, the character is among Cap's more ridiculous villains. While they grounded him for the movie and made his jumping abilities more realistic, he's not a character that one was really hoping would show up in a movie in the first place. Dormammu. Dormammu is one of the most powerful interdimensional beings in the Marvel multiverse. He is older than the known multiverse, as mystic as the forces that rule over it. As the leader of the Dark Dimension, he is essentially omnipotent within his own domain, which is why he should totally be in the MCU at the same point. But just not yet. For a being that is so extremely powerful, Marvel used him way too quick. Unless they have him come back at some point later on to get revenge, it seems that Marvel could have been better served by setting him up over time as Doctor Strange's main villain behind the scenes, with villains like Callias, Baron Mordo, and Mephisto showing up in either movies. Baron von Strucker. Baron von Strucker is another of Captain America's underused villains. He's a leader of Hydra in the comics, and therefore a major antagonist to the Sentinel of Liberty. He's popped up time and again with scheme after scheme, always a thorn in the side of freedom and the American way. Apparently, in between the Avengers and Avengers Age of Ultron, the team has been finding Hydra bases and shutting them down. But we only see their last battle in the effort to end Hydra at the beginning of Age of Ultron. Strucker, therefore, is only seen in a post-credit scene in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and the very beginning of Age of Ultron. He's written off away from the screen, another completely underdeveloped MCU villain.
Hey nerds, if you like this video, go ahead and click that Geek What icon and subscribe. If you want to see more videos like this, join me every Tuesday where you can check out the list.